The chandeliers of the Gilded Elm glittered like constellations above the city's richest. Waiters glided across marble floors, whispering in tones softer than silk. Then came the hush, a sound so small it barely seemed to matter, the thud of a wallet hitting the floor. But that sound would change two women's lives forever. Lena Moore, 26, was on her 6th double shift of the week. Her apron strings were frayed, her feet aching, her smile mechanical. To her, the Gilded Elm wasn't luxury, it was survival. Rent was due. Her little brother's medical bills piled up. Every tip mattered. She was wiping down a corner booth when she saw it, a sleek, black crocodile leather wallet lying near the crystal bar. No one else noticed. She hesitated before picking it up, her heart skipping at the weight of it, cool, heavy, expensive. When she flipped it open to check for ID, the gleam of platinum credit cards caught her eye. Victoria Hale, the embossed name read. The Billionaire. The woman everyone in New York whispered about. The kind who could buy a city block before breakfast. But it wasn't the name that froze Lena's breath. It was the photo tucked neatly behind the ID. A small, faded picture creased from years of being handled. A young woman smiling in front of a field of daisies. Lena's hands trembled. She knew that smile. That soft wave of chestnut hair. That exact dimple. It couldn't be. It was her mother. Her knees went weak, and the room began to blur. Her mother, Caroline Moore, had died in a fire 15 years ago. Lena had only one surviving photo, this exact one, saved from the ashes. The same tilt of the head, the same small tear at the corner of the picture. It couldn't be coincidence. She heard footsteps behind her, heels clicking in perfect rhythm. When she turned, she saw her. Victoria Hale herself. Elegant, tall, wrapped in pearls and authority. People moved aside like water. Lena froze, clutching the wallet. Victoria stopped in front of her, her voice low, composed. My wallet. You found it? Yes, ma'am, Lena whispered, handing it over. Victoria reached for it, her manicured fingers brushing Lena's trembling hand. Their eyes met. And for one suspended heartbeat, something flickered in Victoria's face, confusion, then alarm. Her gaze dropped to the open wallet, to the photo Lena hadn't managed to slide back in time. Her skin turned pale as parchment, where she choked out, her voice cracking. Where did you see that picture? Lena's lips parted, words dying on her tongue. That's my mother, she whispered. Victoria's breath hitched. The color drained from her cheeks, her hand trembled once, then she swayed backward, eyes wide with disbelief. The billionaire's diamond earrings flashed once in the light before she collapsed. And as screams filled the restaurant, Lena realized she had just uncovered a secret worth more than any fortune. The ambulance lights had long faded, but the echo of that gasp, "That's my mother," still rang in Lena's ears. The restaurant had returned to its glittering calm, but she was shaking too hard to clear another table. Her manager told her to go home. You did what you could, he said softly. The woman fainted, not died. Easy for him to say. He didn't just watch a billionaire collapse after seeing his mother's face. The subway ride home was a blur of fluorescent lights and faces she didn't see. Her reflection in the train window looked foreign pale, haunted, eyes rimmed red. She clutched her worn purse like a lifeline. Inside, she had tucked away something she wasn't supposed to take. A crumpled napkin with a single name, scribbled on it, Victoria Hale. She'd written it down so she wouldn't think it was all a dream. Her apartment in Queens was a shoebox, stacked with bills, textbooks, and a chipped coffee pot. It smelled faintly of detergent and burnt toast. But it was home. Her younger brother, Ben, looked up from the couch where he was surrounded by homework and empty inhaler boxes. You look like you saw a ghost, he said, half joking. Lena smiled weakly. Maybe I did. She told him everything: the wallet, the photo, the fainting billionaire. At first he laughed. Then he saw her trembling hands. "Wait," he said, voice low. "The same picture? The one we kept in Mom's old jewelry box?" She nodded. Silence fell. They'd both stared at that picture countless times over the years, their mother's soft smile, the yellow field behind her, the way sunlight caught her eyes. Ben's asthma made him breathe in short, careful bursts. "Maybe it's some kind of coincidence," he murmured. "People look alike all the time." "Not that alike," Lena whispered. "It's her. I swear it's her." She walked to the dresser and pulled out the framed photo. The edges were singed from the house fire 15 years ago, the one that took their mother and almost everything else. She'd been 11. Ben was 6. Their father had already been gone, leaving nothing but unpaid debts and the scent of his cologne on an old coat. They'd grown up learning to fight for every inch of life. Lena had dropped out of community college to pay the rent and worked every job that didn't ask for a degree. She waited tables, folded laundry in hotel basements, and cleaned apartments that smelled like foreign perfume. The Gilded Elm was supposed to be her last stop-a-steady paycheck in a place where people like her were invisible. But not tonight. She sat by the window, the city lights flickering across her face. Somewhere out there, in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, lay the woman who'd fainted at the sight of her mother's picture. Why did she have it? Lena's mind replayed the moment, the tremor in Victoria's hand, the fear in her eyes. That wasn't shock. It was recognition. The next morning, Lena called the hospital to check on her. The nurse's voice was polite but firm. "Mrs. Hale is stable, resting at home." She requested privacy. Privacy, of course. People like Victoria Hale didn't faint, they hid. Lena hung up, staring at the phone. Her heart thudded. Something deep inside told her this wasn't just about a lost wallet. It was about her mother's life and maybe her death. She didn't know what she was going to do yet, but one thing was clear. She wasn't going to let this go. That night, as rain streaked her window, Lena whispered to the photo on her dresser, "Mom, I think someone out there knows the truth about you." And far across the city, in a mansion lined with secrets, Victoria Hale woke from a nightmare screaming your mother's name. Morning sunlight spilled through the towering windows of Hale Manor, painting streaks of gold across marble floors so polished they mirrored the sky. The estate sat just beyond the Hudson River, a fortress of wealth and silence. Outside, gardeners trimmed hedges sculpted into swans, while inside, servants moved like shadows. Quiet, efficient, invisible. Victoria Hale sat alone in her glass-walled study, a silk robe draped around her shoulders, her skin still pale from the fainting episode. Her private physician had warned her to rest. But how could she rest after what she'd seen? That waitress's face, those eyes, that trembling voice saying, "That's my mother." It had cracked something inside her, something she'd spent decades building walls around. She reached for the wallet lying on her desk. Her trembling fingers pulled out the photograph again. The woman in the picture smiled back through time. Caroline Moore. Or rather, Catherine Hale, as she had once been known. Victoria's only daughter. The child she'd believed dead. Her breath came shallow and quick. 30 years ago, Catherine had vanished after a fight that tore the family apart. There had been whispers of scandal and affair with a man from the wrong side of the city, rumors of betrayal, money gone missing. Then came the car accident, the body never found, the funeral with an empty coffin. Victoria had mourned her only daughter until grief hardened into denial, and denial became the armor she wore to rule her empire. Now, out of nowhere, a waitress had brought her ghost back to life. Across town, Lena stood outside the gates of Hale Manor, her uniform replaced by a thrift store dress and a knot of nerves in her stomach. She had spent the entire night scouring the internet for anything about Victoria Hale charity galas, business awards, magazine interviews. Every photo showed the same poised woman with a controlled smile and diamond-hard eyes. But in one old article from the 90s, Lena had found a detail that made her heart race. Victoria Hale had a daughter named Catherine. It couldn't be coincidence. Catherine. Caroline. The resemblance was too close, the dates too aligned. When the security guard at the gate eyed her suspiciously, Lena held up a small brown envelope. "I just want to return something," she said. "It's important." After several tense minutes, she was escorted through a long driveway lined with fountains and rose gardens. The house loomed above her like a museum of secrets. She was led through a marble foyer, past oil portraits of men in tuxedos and women dripping pearls. Every step echoed. Victoria waited in the sitting room, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. The two women studied each other, the billionaire and the waitress, separated by everything except the haunting familiarity in their faces. "You wanted to see me," Victoria said quietly. Lena nodded, clutching the photo she had copied from her own frame. "I just needed to know why this picture is in your wallet." For a long moment, Victoria said nothing. Her eyes drifted to the photo, and something flickered behind them. Pain, memory, fear. "That woman," she whispered, "was someone I once loved very much. Someone I lost." "My mother?" Lena asked softly. Victoria's gaze snapped up. "Your mother?" she echoed, the words trembling like glass about to shatter. Lena held out her copy of the photograph. The two pictures, identical, down to the faded corner lay side by side on the polished table. Victoria's face drained of color. She reached out, tracing the edge of the photo with a trembling hand. "This can't be it is," Lena said, "and I think you know why." For the first time in decades, the walls of Hale Manor felt fragile, and deep inside its halls, a locked room held the truth Victoria swore she'd buried forever. The silence between them stretched so long that Lena could hear the faint ticking of a golden clock on the mantel. The two photographs still lay side by side on the table, two lives, one truth. Victoria's hand trembled as she poured herself a glass of water, her composure slowly returning, the mask reforming. "Miss Moore," she began, her voice low, deliberate. "This is clearly a misunderstanding. You're mistaken about the woman in this photo. I don't know who your mother was, but she wasn't her." Lena's throat tightened. "With respect, ma'am, you don't understand. My mother's name was Caroline Moore. She died 15 years ago in a fire. This is the same photo I grew up looking at." Victoria's fingers curled around the glass. "Caroline, Catherine, similar names. Coincidence, nothing more." But her voice cracked on the word coincidence. Before Lena could answer, a man entered the room, tall, broad-shouldered, with a perfectly cut suit and an expression that could slice through steel. "Mother, you shouldn't be meeting with anyone right now," he said sharply. Lena turned. The resemblance was clear, the same grey eyes, the same air of superiority. This had to be Victoria's son. "Elliot," Victoria said, exhaling. "This is Miss Moore. She's the young woman who returned my wallet." Elliot's eyes flicked to Lena, then down to the photos. "And she decided to stay for coffee, I see," he said dryly. "How generous of her." Lena felt her cheeks burn, but she didn't back down. "I didn't come for coffee. I came for answers." Elliot smiled, a cold, practiced gesture that didn't reach his eyes. "Answers? About what, exactly?" "My mother doesn't owe you an explanation. She's been through enough without opportunists showing up at her door." "Elliot," Victoria warned softly. But he ignored her. "Let me guess," he continued, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "You saw her name in the papers, decided she looked like an easy target, and now you're spinning some sob story about your mother." "I've seen it before." Lena's hands clenched at her sides. "I'm not after her money," she said. I just need to know why she has this picture. My mom died, thinking someone was after her. She used to wake up screaming in the middle of the night. I want to know what she was so afraid of." For the first time, Victoria's face softened. "She was afraid?" she whispered, more to herself than to Lena. Elliot's expression darkened. "Mother, don't. You don't owe this girl anything. She's not family." "She's not enough," Victoria snapped, her voice echoing off the marble walls. Elliot flinched, stunned into silence. Victoria stood, regaining her full, imposing height. "You forget yourself," she said coldly. "Miss Moore is a guest in this house." Lena swallowed hard, torn between fear and curiosity. "Please," she said quietly, "if there's something I deserve to know, just tell me." Victoria turned away, staring out the tall glass window that overlooked the gardens. Her reflection shimmered faintly against the sunlight. "There are things in this world, Miss Moore," she said at last, "that can destroy families. Sometimes it's mercy to let the past stay buried." "But it's my past, too," Lena whispered. That made Victoria turn. For a split second, something raw flickered across her face. Guilt, pain, love, but it vanished almost instantly. Elliot stepped closer to Lena, lowering his voice to a dangerous whisper. "If you're smart," he said, "you'll walk out that door and never come back. My mother doesn't need ghosts haunting her." Lena looked him dead in the eye. Maybe she's not the only one. As she left the mansion, rain beginning to fall, Elliot watched from the window, dialing someone on his phone. "She knows," he muttered. "Handle it before she finds out more." And far below, Lena stepped into the storm unaware that she'd just become a target. The next evening, Lena's hands still trembled when she clocked in for her shift at the Gilded Elm. She told herself to focus, to breathe, to act normal. But her mind refused to stop replaying that moment in Hale Manor. The photo, Victoria's eyes, and Elliot's warning that had sounded less like concern and more like a threat. The restaurant was busier than usual. A charity gala had rented the entire East Wing, and photographers swarmed outside like bees to honey. Word spread quickly among the staff. Victoria Hale herself would be attending, along with her son. Lena's stomach tightened. It couldn't be coincidence. By 8 o'clock, the chandeliers blazed, and the air was heavy with perfume and power. Billionaires, politicians, and socialites sipped champagne as if it were oxygen. Waiters moved in precision, every smile measured, every bow rehearsed. Lena tried to disappear into the crowd, but fate had other plans. "Table 7, her manager whispered urgently. "VIP guests. Handle it carefully, Moore." When she turned, her heart stopped. Sitting at table 7 was Victoria Hale, elegant, radiant, untouchable. Her calm smile, giving no hint of the turmoil from yesterday. Beside her sat Elliot, his expression cold and unreadable. Lena wanted to run, but her legs carried her forward automatically. She approached with the practiced grace of a server who'd learned to mask everything: fear, exhaustion, grief behind a polite smile. "Good evening," she said softly. "May I take your drink order?" Elliot's eyes flicked up, sharp as glass. "Ah, the waitress from yesterday," he said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Didn't expect to see you here again." "Mother, isn't this the young woman who claimed we were family?" A ripple of laughter moved through the nearby tables. Lena froze, mortified. Victoria's hand tightened on her wineglass. "Elliot," she said warningly. But her son wasn't finished. "Oh, don't be modest," he continued. "She came to our home, waving some old photo, saying her mother was your long-lost daughter. Touching story, isn't it?" Whispers ignited across the room like sparks. Heads turned. A few phones lifted discreetly. Lena's throat burned. "That's not what happened," she said, her voice trembling. "I only asked," Elliot interrupted, standing now, towering over her. "You demanded. You trespassed. You manipulated an old woman's Emotions for attention. You're lucky we didn't call the police." The laughter grew louder, crueler. Lena could feel every gaze stabbing into her back. Her chest tightened, her vision blurring with humiliation. "Please," she whispered. "I didn't mean." Victoria rose abruptly, slamming her glass down so hard it cracked. "Enough!" The entire restaurant fell silent. Her eyes flashed with fury, not at Lena, but at her son. "Sit down, Elliot." He hesitated, stunned. "Mother now." Elliot slowly lowered himself into his chair, seething. Victoria turned to Lena, her voice softer now. "Miss Moore, I apologize. My son forgets his manners." Lena blinked back tears. "It's fine. Mom, you'll get your drinks." She turned quickly before her voice could break. As she walked away, the room erupted in low murmurs. Some guests looked pitying, others amused. She made it to the service corridor before collapsing against the wall, breath shallow, face burning with shame. Through the glass door, she saw Victoria watching heiress, glistening with something that looked almost like guilt. And then, for a brief moment, their eyes met again. Victoria's lips moved silently, as if forming the words, "I'm sorry." But across the table, Elliot was already pulling out his phone, his face twisting into a smile that promised this was far from over. The sound of laughter still echoed in Lena's ears, long after the gala ended. She sat in the dark storage hallway behind the restaurant, her hands buried in her lap, fighting to steady her breath. Hours ago, she had been a nobody, trying to stay invisible. Now she was the center of a public humiliation that would haunt her forever. Her phone buzzed, Ben's name flashing on the screen. She hesitated before answering. "Hey," she whispered. "Lena, what happened?" "Someone at your job posted a video. It's all over social media." Her heart stopped. "What?" "They're saying you accused a billionaire of being your family or something. People are calling you a scammer." Her stomach turned to ice. The video, Elliot's smirking face, her trembling voice was probably already circulating online. The lie was spreading faster than she could breathe. "I didn't do anything wrong," she said weakly. "I know," Ben said gently. "But the internet doesn't care." Before she could answer, the kitchen door swung open. Victoria Hale stood there, her diamond necklace gone, her expression stripped of every trace of glamour. "Miss Moore," she said softly, "may I have a word?" The kitchen staff froze, staring. Lena stood, her voice barely audible. "Yes, ma'am." Victoria motioned her toward the private dining room. It was empty now, the lights dimmed, the smell of champagne and scandal still lingering in the air. She turned to Lena, her tone heavy with guilt. "You didn't deserve what happened tonight. I should have stopped it sooner." Lena swallowed hard. "Then why didn't you?" Victoria's eyes lowered. "Because the truth terrifies me." Lena's voice broke. "My whole life, I've wanted to know why my mother died in that fire. Why she always said someone was following her. I thought maybe you could tell me." Victoria looked up sharply, her face drained of color. "What did you say?" "Someone was after her," Lena repeated. "She used to wake me up at night, whispering that they'd find us if we stayed too long anywhere. I thought she was sick, but after seeing your photo, I'm not so sure." Victoria took a shaky step back. "You shouldn't know any of this." "Then tell me why," Lena cried. "Tell me who she really was." For a long moment, Victoria said nothing. The weight of decades pressed down between them. Then very slowly, she whispered, "She wasn't just my daughter. She was my mistake and my punishment." Lena blinked, stunned. "What do you mean?" Before Victoria could answer, the door burst open. Elliot stormed in, his phone still in hand. "Enough of this nonsense," he snapped. "Mother, you're not saying another word to her." Victoria's voice hardened. "Elliot, stop!" He stepped closer to Lena, towering over her. "You think you can blackmail my family, you little liar? Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? Lena's fear burned away, replaced by something fiercer. She straightened her shoulders. Yes, she said calmly. I'm dealing with the people who ruined my mother's life. The room went silent. Even Victoria froze. Elliot's jaw tightened. Get out, he hissed. But Lena didn't move. She looked him straight in the eye, her voice steady and sharp enough to slice through the tension. You can destroy my name, but you can't change the truth. And soon, everyone will know it. Victoria's eyes widened. For the first time, her son had no comeback, only fury. Lena turned and walked toward the door, her heart hammering. Behind her, she heard Victoria whisper, "She has her mother's courage." As the door closed, flashes from outside lit the night reporters swarming the entrance. The scandal had gone public, and by morning the name Lena Moore would no longer belong to a waitress, it would belong to a storm. The headlines hit the next morning like thunder. Waitress claims heiress, connection to billionaire family, scandal at charity gala. Pictures of Lena's shocked face beside Victoria Hale's composed one filled every gossip site in New York. The tabloids called her a liar, a con artist, a social climber with delusions of grandeur. Lena didn't leave her apartment for 2 days. The diner fired her. Strangers online flooded her messages with hate. Even Ben's teachers whispered about her at school. She tried to stay strong, but the weight of humiliation pressed down like a storm she couldn't outrun. Then, on the third night, someone knocked on her door. She opened it to find Victoria Hale standing in the rain, her silver hair plastered to her face, her eyes red-rimmed. No bodyguards, no limousine, just her. "May I come in?" the older woman asked quietly. Lena hesitated before stepping aside. The small apartment felt smaller with Victoria in it. She looked around at the worn furniture, the stack of unpaid bills, the framed photo of Carolyn on the dresser. Her breath caught when she saw it. "I told you I was afraid of the truth," she said softly. "But it's time I stop running from it." Lena stood, frozen. "Then tell me, who was my mother really?" Victoria sat down slowly, her voice trembling. "Your mother's real name was Catherine Hale, my daughter, my only child." She drew a shaky breath. "She fell in love with a man who worked for US, a man your grandfather despised. When she became pregnant, he tried to force her to end it. She refused. So she ran. I let her go." Lena's knees nearly gave out. "You knew where she was?" "I thought she'd be safer away from us," Victoria whispered. "But your grandfather found her years later. He arranged the fire that was meant to silence the scandal forever. I thought she'd died, until you walked into that restaurant." Lena stared, disbelief and rage colliding in her chest. "You knew," she said through clenched teeth, "and you stayed quiet while I grew up, thinking she was just gone." Tears welled in Victoria's eyes. "I lost my daughter once. I can't lose her child, too." The room went silent except for the rain hitting the window. For the first time, Lena saw not the billionaire, but a mother crushed under her own guilt. "What about Elliot?" she asked bitterly. "He tried to destroy me." Victoria's expression hardened. "He won't succeed. Not this time." The next morning, the Hale Corporation held an emergency press conference. Reporters packed the marble lobby, cameras flashing. Victoria Hale, regal as ever, stepped to the podium. Elliot stood behind her, pale and furious. "My family has lived under a shadow of secrets," she began. "It ends today. The young woman you've all seen in the media, Lena Mooris, my granddaughter, the daughter of my late child, Catherine Hale." Gasps filled the room. Elliot's jaw tightened. "She deserves the truth," Victoria continued, her voice steady now. "And she deserves her name." She turned toward Lena, who stood at the edge of the crowd, trembling but unbroken. "Welcome home, Miss Hale." The cameras exploded in flashes. Elliot stormed out. Afterward, Victoria took Lena's hand. "You don't have to forgive me," she said quietly. But let me make it right. Months later, a new cafe opened downtown, a bright little place called Catherine's Table. On opening day, Victoria sat in the corner, sipping coffee beside Ben. Photos of Caroline Catherine adorned the walls, smiling from another life. Lena moved through the cafe, her apron now embroidered with gold lettering. No longer invisible. No longer a waitress, surviving paycheck to paycheck, but a woman who had found her truth, her family, and her strength. And as Victoria watched her granddaughter laugh behind the counter, she whispered to the photo on the wall, "You were right, Catherine." She did find her way home. 3 months later, the city had almost moved on from the Hale scandal. But inside the glossy boardroom of Hale Corporation, tension simmered like a storm under glass. Lena sat beside Victoria at the long mahogany table, surrounded by lawyers, executives, and people who had once whispered her name with disgust. At 26, she still felt out of place in her borrowed blazer and second-hand heels. Yet, beside Victoria, she looked unshakable. The press had renamed her the Lost Heiress. To some, she was a miracle. To others, a mistake. Across the table, Elliot sat in silence, his expression carved from stone. His jaw worked as he listened to the company attorney drone about transitional power structures and public confidence. He looked every bit the polished heir until his eyes flicked toward Lena, cold and sharp. Victoria cleared her throat. "Effective immediately," she announced, "I'll be transferring my shares to a joint trust, half under my management, half under my granddaughter's. It's time this family rebuilt what we destroyed." The words hung heavy in the air. Elliot's chair screeched as he stood abruptly. "You can't be serious." "I'm very serious," Victoria replied, unflinching. "This company was founded on family, and family nearly tore it apart." "That ends today." Elliot's voice dropped, smooth and venomous. "She's not family. She's a waitress who lucked into a headline. You think the board will accept her? She doesn't belong here." Lena met his gaze, her heart pounding. "Maybe not," she said quietly. "But neither did my mother. And yet she built half of what you're sitting on before you erased her name." The room fell silent. Victoria's eyes gleamed with pride and grief. "Enough," Victoria said firmly. "I've made my decision. The papers are ready for my signature." Elliot's eyes darkened. He leaned closer, his voice a hiss meant only for Lena. "You think you've won? You don't know what this world does to people like you." She didn't flinch. "Maybe not. But I know what truth does to people like you." Victoria signed the documents, sealing them with a flourish. It was done. The company's future, its name, its legacy was no longer just his. But as they left the boardroom, Lena caught a glimpse of Elliot on his phone, his voice low and furious. "Find what she's hiding," he said. "There has to be something. Everyone has a price." That night, as rain streaked the city skyline, Lena stood on the balcony of her new apartment, still trying to believe it was real. Her mother's face smiled down from the framed photo inside, the same one that had started it all. For once, the air felt lighter, until her phone buzzed. A blocked number. "Miss Hale," a male voice said smoothly, "if you care about your grandmother's safety, you'll meet me tomorrow. Alone." 10 a.m., Central Park, near the fountain. Her blood ran cold. "Who is this?" But the line had already gone dead. The next morning, Victoria insisted she stay home. "You've been through enough," she said, stroking her granddaughter's hair. "Let me handle the business with Elliot." But Lena couldn't shake the message. Something in her gut told her this was more than a threat, it was a trap. She slipped out quietly before sunrise, clutching the photo of her mother in her purse like a shield. When she reached the fountain, the park was quiet except for the hum of traffic in the distance. A man in a dark coat stood waiting, his back turned. "Miss Hale," he said when she approached, his voice disturbingly familiar. He turned around, revealing a smirk she'd seen before Elliot's head of security. Your family, he said softly, built its fortune on lies. Maybe it's time those lies come crashing down. Before she could react, he handed her a manila envelope, and inside it lay photos that could destroy everything Victoria had just rebuilt. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. Lena's fingers shook as she pulled back the flap and slid out a neat stack of glossy photographs. At first, she couldn't make sense of them, grainy, black and white surveillance images, some faded with age, others disturbingly recent. But as her eyes adjusted, her heart began to pound. The first photo showed a younger Victoria Hale sitting beside a man in a grey suit at a conference table. The caption typed at the bottom read, "Offshore Transfer, 1991. The next image, her mother, Catherine leaning over the same table, signing papers with that same man standing behind her. Then another, taken years later. A burning warehouse, flames licking at the night sky. A date stamped in the corner matched the year her mother supposedly died. Lena's stomach turned. The man in every photo was the same Elliot's father, Richard Hale. The security officer smirked, clearly enjoying her shock. Your mother didn't die because of an accident. She died because she found something she wasn't supposed to. Lena's throat tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying your grandfather wasn't the only one with blood on his hands. He leaned closer, his breath sour with tobacco. That fire was ordered. Someone needed to make sure the Hale empire stayed clean. Maybe you should ask the woman pretending to save you, now what she was saving herself from. Before she could respond, he turned and disappeared into the mist. Lena clutched the photos to her chest and ran. Rain began to fall, drenching her as she raced through the park, heart hammering with dread. Every image in her hands felt like a knife aimed at the fragile peace she'd built with Victoria. When she reached home, Victoria was waiting in the sitting room, her expression worried. Lena, where have you been? I've been calling you all morning. Lena dropped the envelope on the table between them. The photos spilled out like spilled truth. I need you to explain these. Victoria froze. Her face went pale as she picked up the first picture. Where did you get these? Does it matter? Lena snapped. You told me my grandfather caused the fire, but this shows you were part of it. Did you lie to me? Victoria's lips parted, but no sound came out. Tears welled in her eyes. It's not what you think, she whispered. Then tell me what it is. Lena's voice cracked. Because right now, it looks like my mother died to protect your name. For a moment, Victoria looked older than Lena had ever seen her. She sat down heavily, her trembling hands clutching one of the photos. I didn't order the fire, she said finally. But I knew about it. Richard told me it was just meant to scare her. I believed him, and by the time I realized what he'd done, it was too late. Lena's tears spilled over. You knew. You let me live all these years thinking she'd just disappeared. Victoria's voice broke. I thought if I told you, you'd hate me forever. Then congratulations, Lena said bitterly. You got your wish. She turned toward the door, but Victoria grabbed her wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. Listen to me, Victoria pleaded. Those photos didn't just appear. Elliot's behind this. He wants to destroy us both. Don't let him. Lena yanked free, her eyes blazing. Maybe he's the only one telling the truth. She stormed out into the rain, the photos clutched tight in her hand, unaware of the black car parked across the street, its engine idling, its driver watching. Inside, Victoria sank into her chair, shaking, whispering to the empty room. Catherine, forgive me. I never meant for her to pay for my sins. Outside, lightning cracked the sky. And in that flash, a camera clicked. Somewhere, another secret had just been caught on film, and the war for the Hale legacy was about to begin. Rain lashed against the windows of Lena's small apartment as thunder rolled like the echo of old sins. The photographs were spread across her kitchen table, each one glinting under the weak light of a flickering bulb. Every face in those pictures, her mother's, Victoria's, Richard, Hale's, looked like ghosts staring back at her, demanding justice. Ben sat across from her, chewing his thumbnail nervously. "So you think your grandmother knew?" he asked quietly. Lena nodded, staring at the photo of the warehouse. She didn't light the fire, but she let it burn. "That's just as bad." Ben sighed. "You should talk to her before you do anything. Maybe there's more to it." But Lena shook her head. "No. I've spent my whole life waiting for people to tell me the truth. I'm done waiting." She slipped the photos into a plastic folder, zipped up her jacket, and grabbed her umbrella. "If the Hales destroyed my mother, then they can destroy me too. But I'm not going to stay quiet." By the time she reached Hale Manor, the storm had turned savage. The wind screamed through the iron gates, and lightning illuminated the mansion like a haunted cathedral. She pushed open the heavy doors without knocking. Victoria was in the study, staring at an old portrait of Catherine, her daughter, hung above the fireplace. When she turned, her eyes widened. "Lena, you're soaked, I don't care," Lena interrupted, her voice breaking. "I just want the truth, all of it." Victoria's composure crumbled. She sat down slowly, gesturing to the chair across from her. "Then you deserve to hear it from me." Lena dropped the folder on the desk. "Start with the fire." Victoria's hands shook as she opened one of the photos. "Your mother found out something about Richard. Something that could have destroyed the company. Offshore accounts, stolen charity funds, secret deals. She wanted to expose him. I begged her not to, Lena. I thought I was protecting her. And instead, you got her killed," Lena whispered. Victoria's tears spilled freely now. "He told me it was just a scare tactic. I believed him. When the fire broke out, I went to the site myself. I saw the flames. I saw the bracelet she always wore. I thought she was gone. I buried an empty coffin." Lena's heart pounded, torn between fury and heartbreak. "So you built your empire on her ashes. You let him get away with it." Victoria lifted her head, her voice trembling but fierce. "I did. But I'm not letting him or Elliot win again. Richard's crimes didn't die with him. My son's trying to cover them up, to finish what his father started. And you, my dear, are the only one who can stop him." Lena blinked. "What are you talking about?" Victoria pulled open a drawer and slid a thin folder across the desk. Inside were financial records, signatures, wire transversal proof of decades-old embezzlement tied to the Hales' fortune. "Catherine copied these the night before the fire," she said. "She hid them somewhere, but I've spent years trying to find the originals. Elliot must have them now." Lena's fingers brushed the papers. The truth, her mother's truth, was finally in front of her, fragile and dangerous. Victoria reached out, her voice barely a whisper. "I can't undo what I did, but I can help you finish what your mother started." Lena looked up, tears stinging her eyes. "And if we do this, what happens to us?" Victoria gave a faint, sorrowful smile. "Then the world will finally know who Catherine Hale really was, and who you are." Outside, the storm began to break. For the first time, Lena didn't feel like the waitress who found a billionaire's wallet. She felt like her mother's daughter, standing on the edge of truth with thunder at her back. The next morning dawned grey and heavy, the kind of morning that made even the city seem afraid to breathe. Lena hadn't slept. The folder Victoria had given her lay open on the table beside a half-finished cup of coffee, gone cold. Each page revealed more of what her mother had risked her life for: fraud, bribery, and money funneled into shell charities under the Hale name. Ben scrolled through scanned copies of the documents on his laptop. "If this stuff is real," he whispered, "it could ruin them all." Lena rubbed her temples. "That's why my mother was killed. She found out too much." Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You're playing a dangerous game. Stop digging before you end up like her." Her stomach dropped. She looked up at Ben. "They know." Ben grabbed her arm. "Then go to the police." Lena shook her head. "Not yet. We need proof that can't be denied, something bigger. Mum must have hidden the originals somewhere." That afternoon, she drove to their old family home on the outskirts of the city, the small, crumbling house that had burned 15 years ago. The windows were boarded, the yard swallowed by weeds, but as she stepped through the warped front door, memories hit her like a wave. The smell of ash still lingered faintly in the air. She wandered through what used to be the living room, running her fingers along the scorched walls. Her mother's laughter seemed to echo faintly in her mind. "Where did you hide it, Mom?" she whispered. Then she saw eat a loose floorboard near the corner of the room, half burned, but still intact. Her pulse quickened. She pried it open with a screwdriver from her bag. Beneath the charred wood lay a small metal box, blackened from heat but still sealed. Inside, wrapped in a soot-stained cloth, was a flash drive. Her hands trembled as she plugged it into Ben's old laptop right there on the dusty floor. A single folder appeared. "See Hale Truth." When she opened it, her mother's face appeared on the screen, an old video file dated 2 days before the fire. Catherine sat in a small room, her eyes tired but determined. "If you're watching this," the video began, "it means I didn't make it. My name is Catherine Hale, daughter of Victoria Hale. My father and husband, Richard Hale, have been laundering money through the company's charities for decades. I've gathered evidence. If anything happens to me, find the files in the offshore accounts folder. Don't trust anyone, not even my mother. She's not innocent, but she's not your enemy either." Lena's tears fell silently. Her mother's voice felt like a ghost's hand on her shoulder. Suddenly, headlights flashed through the cracked window. 2 black SUVs pulling up outside. Ben looked out and cursed under his breath. "They found us! Grab the laptop!" Lena shouted. They ran through the back door, splashing into the overgrown yard as footsteps pounded behind them. Bullets shattered glass as they ducked behind an old shed. The laptop nearly slipped from her hands. "Go," Ben yelled. "He'll distract them." "No!" she screamed, grabbing his arm. But before she could stop him, he darted toward the opposite side of the property, drawing the pursuer's attention. Lena sprinted toward her car, the rain pelting her face, her heart a drum in her chest. She dove into the driver's seat, the laptop clutched to her chest, and sped off into the storm. In the rearview mirror, she saw one SUV skid and stop at the burning remains of her old home. The flash drive, her mother's, truth was safe in her pocket. Somewhere behind her, in the shadows of the storm, Elliot Hale watched from another car, smiling faintly. "So she found it," he murmured. "Good. Now she'll lead us to the rest." The storm had passed by morning, leaving the city drenched and gleaming like polished glass. But Lena's world was still trembling. She hadn't slept. The flash drive, the only proof of her mother's truth, rested in her pocket like a loaded weapon. Ben hadn't answered her calls since the night before. His phone went straight to voicemail. Every time she tried again, her stomach knotted tighter. Had he escaped? Or had they caught him? Victoria called just after sunrise. "Lena, where are you? I heard there was trouble at your old house." Lena hesitated. "You were right. Elliot's people found me. But I got something they'll kill to keep buried." "What did you find?" "My mother," Lena said quietly. "On video." There was a pause, a sharp intake of breath. "Bring it here, now. We'll make sure it gets to the press safely." Lena's instinct screamed to trust no one, not even her grandmother. But time was slipping away, and Victoria was the only ally she had left. "I'm on my way," she said, hanging up before doubt could stop her. The Hale Tower loomed above the skyline as she arrived, 60 floors of mirrored glass reflecting the world it ruled. Inside, security guards nodded stiffly as she passed. The elevator climbed in silence, her reflection staring back at her in the chrome walls. When the doors opened to the top floor, Victoria was waiting near the window, her silver hair gleaming in the light. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said softly. "I have," Lena replied, handing over the flash drive. "It's all there. Mum recorded everything." Victoria took it carefully, her eyes filled with both wonder and dread. "You've done more than anyone could have asked of you." But something in her tone, too calm, too rehearsed, made Lena's heart skip. "Where's Ben?" she asked. Victoria hesitated. "Safe," she said finally. "My people are looking after him." Lena frowned. "Your people?" Before she could press further, the office door opened. Elliot strode in, his smile razor-sharp. "There you are," he said. "I was beginning to think you'd gone underground." Lena stepped back, realization flooding her. You called him here?" Victoria's lips parted, but no words came. Elliot held up a small black device between two fingers. "You really shouldn't plug strange flash drives into my company's computers, Miss Hale. You never know who's watching." Lena's blood went cold. "You bugged me." "Of course," he said easily. "How else was I supposed to find the evidence you were stupid enough to carry around?" Victoria's voice trembled. "Elliot, stop this." "No," he snapped. "You've made a fool of me, Mother. You gave half the company to a girl you barely know, and now you've dragged our name into the gutter." He turned toward Lena, his voice low and venomous. "Your mother destroyed my father. You think he'll let her daughter do the same?" Lena's hand moved slowly toward her pocket, where she'd hidden a second copy of the flash drive. "Maybe you don't have a choice," she said quietly. Elliot laughed. "Oh, I think I do." He gestured, and 2 security guards appeared at the door, stepping forward. But before they could grab her, Victoria slammed her palm against the desk. "Enough!" she shouted. "You will not touch her. She is your blood." Elliot turned to her, fury twisting his face. "She's a liability. And you," Victoria hissed, "are a disgrace." For a heartbeat, they stood frozen, mother and son, legacy and greed colliding in silence. Then Elliot's jaw clenched. He turned and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the glass trembled. Victoria sank into her chair, her composure cracking. "He's going to come after us," she whispered. Lena exhaled shakily. "Let him try, because next time he won't be the only one with power." Unbeknownst to them, the elevator camera outside blinked red. Elliot was already watching the live feed, his smirk returning as he whispered, "If they want war, he'll give them one." The following week was chaos cloaked in silence. The media didn't yet know that Hale Corporation was imploding, but those inside could feel the tremor before the quake. Employees whispered in corridors, executives resigned quietly, and stock values began to slip. Something dark was coming. Lena hadn't seen Elliot since the confrontation, but his presence lingered everywhere, emails mysteriously deleted, phone lines going dead, messages intercepted. It was like being haunted by a ghost who knew every secret before she did. Victoria barely slept. She spent her nights locked in her study, combing through decades of documents, trying to find a way to shield the company and Lena from the storm her own son had unleashed. "Every empire falls," she murmured one morning, staring out at the city from her balcony. "But I never thought it would be my own blood that pulled the trigger." Lena joined her, clutching a steaming cup of coffee. "You can still stop him," she said. "If we release the files my mother saved, the public will see the truth." Victoria turned, exhaustion softening her once impenetrable expression. "It's not that simple. If we expose everything, thousands of employees will lose their jobs. Charities funded under our name will collapse. Elliot's guilt is mine too, Lena. If he falls, I fall with him." Lena's jaw tightened. "Then maybe that's justice?" Before Victoria could respond, her phone buzzed. She answered, listening for only a few seconds before her face went pale. "What?" she whispered. "No, that's impossible." She hung up slowly, her voice trembling. "Ben's been taken." Lena's world tilted. "What do you mean, taken?" "The driver I sent to pick him up from school never arrived at the house. Security footage shows 2 men in black suits leading him into a van registered under one of Elliot's companies." Lena's pulse roared in her ears. No, he wouldn't." "Oh, yes, he would," Victoria said grimly. "He's trying to silence you. He knows you're the only one who can ruin him." Lena's breath came fast. "Then we go to the police." Victoria's eyes darkened. "Elliot owns half the police precinct in this city. We can't trust anyone, but there's one person who might help one of your mother's old contacts. His name was David Klein, an investigative journalist. She mentioned him in her notes. If he's still alive, he might have the missing data files." Within an hour, Lena and Victoria were on the road, driving through the outskirts of Manhattan toward a rundown neighborhood near the river. The address led them to a warehouse with a flickering neon sign that read, "Klein Media Group." A thin man with graying hair opened the door. His eyes widened when he saw them. "You look just like her," he said softly. "Catherine Hale." Lena stepped forward, desperate. "You knew my mother." "I helped her back up the files the night before the fire," he said, leading them inside. "She said if anything happened, her daughter would come looking one day." He opened a rusted cabinet and pulled out an old hard drive. "Everything's here. Bank records, wire transfers, blackmail notes. Enough to bring down the entire Hale dynasty." Before Lena could speak, gunfire erupted outside. The windows shattered, bullets slicing through the air. Victoria screamed, diving behind a desk. Elliot's voice boomed through a megaphone from outside. "Give me the drive, Lena, and maybe your brother walks away alive." Her blood ran cold. Ben David Klein grabbed her arm. "Take it and run. There's a back exit through the printing room." Lena hesitated, but Victoria's fierce voice broke through the panic. "Go. Save your brother. He'll hold them off." Tears blurred her vision as she clutched the drive and bolted toward the back door. The sounds of gunfire echoed behind her, shouts, glass breaking, Victoria's defiant voice shouting her name. She burst out into the rain-soaked alley, gasping for air, clutching the hard drive like her mother's last heartbeat. Behind her, Hale Tower was already burning on the evening news, and the headline read, "Billionaire Empire Under Siege, Hale Family Scandal Deepens." But Lena didn't see it. She was already running toward the truth and her brother. The city looked different when you were running for your life. Neon lights blurred into streaks of rain and fear, and every passing face felt like a threat. Lena's hands were raw from clutching the hard drive, her breath coming in shallow bursts as she ducked into an abandoned parking garage to catch her breath. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. She hesitated before answering. "Hello?" A distorted male voice responded, calm and calculated. "Miss Hale, you have something that belongs to us, and we have something that belongs to you." Her heart stopped. "Ben, where is he?" "Alive, for now," the voice said. "But you know how fragile life can be." "Well, make a trade. Tonight, 11 p.m., the old docks on Pier 40. You bring the hard drive. You come alone. If I don't," she asked, voice trembling, "then your brother's next fire won't be an accident." The line went dead. Lena sank to her knees, the phone slipping from her hand. Her mind screamed in panic, but beneath the fear, something sharper began to take shape. Resolve. She drove back to the Hale estate just before sunset. The mansion, once alive with glittering parties and servants' chatter, was dark now. The press had surrounded the gates since the morning explosions at Hale Tower, but she slipped in through the back road. Inside, Victoria was sitting in the dimly lit parlor, her left arm bandaged, her expression pale but fierce. "You shouldn't have come back," she said weakly. "They'll follow you." "They already have, Ben," Lena replied. They want to trade him for the hard drive. Victoria's eyes widened. Pier 40. Lena nodded. Tonight. Victoria struggled to her feet, ignoring the pain. Then we're not going alone. Lena frowned. You can't fight them. You're hurt. Victoria gave a dry laugh. You think I built an empire without learning how to handle men like my son? I'm not going to lose another child. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, 2 generations of the same fire, finally burning together instead of apart. By nightfall, the docks were shrouded in fog. Cargo crates rose like tombstones under the flickering glow of broken lamps. Lena stepped out of the car, clutching the hard drive. She could hear the distant hum of the river, the creak of old wood, and her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Ben, she called out. From the shadows, Elliot emerged, dressed in black, a smirk curling across his face. Always the heroine, he said. Behind him, 2 guards dragged Ben into view, his hands bound, his lip bleeding, but alive. Let him go, Lena demanded, holding up the hard drive. You'll get what you want. Elliot's smile widened. Oh, I already have what I want. You think this is about files? It's about cleaning up my father's mess and mother's, too. Victoria stepped from behind a cargo container, her voice cutting through the fog. Then start with me. Elliot's smirk faltered. You shouldn't have come. I buried 1 child, she said, stepping closer. I won't bury another. Lena's eyes darted between them. You don't have to do this. Oh, but I do, Elliot said coldly. Because everything you think you've uncovered dies with you. He raised his gun. Victoria moved first, throwing herself in front of Lena. The gun fired. The shot echoed through the night. Elliot froze, horror flashing in his eyes as his mother collapsed. Lena screamed, dropping beside Victoria, her hands pressing against the wound. Stay with me. Victoria's blood stained Lena's hands, her voice barely a whisper. Take the truth and run. Elliot's guards fled as silence wailed in the distance, red and blue lights piercing the fog. Lena looked up through her tears and saw Elliot running toward the river, the empire crumbling behind him, but she didn't chase. She cradled Victoria's hand as the matriarch whispered one final word. Catherine. And then she was gone. The sirens grew louder, but Lena barely heard them. She sat on the cold dock, Victoria's lifeless hand still in hers, the fog swallowing everything except the crimson on her palms. Ben knelt beside her, his face streaked with tears. Lena, we have to go, he whispered, but she couldn't move. For a moment, time stopped. The woman who had once built an empire and buried her guilt now lay still, the night wind tugging at her silver hair. It didn't feel real. Victoria Hull, the woman who had terrified boardrooms, commanded headlines, and guarded her secrets like their treasure, was gone. When the police arrived, they surrounded the area. But Lena knew the truth before the detectives even spoke. Elliot had vanished. Hours later, Lena sat in an interrogation room at the precinct, her body wrapped in a blanket, her eyes blank. The lead detective, a heavy-set man with tired eyes, leaned forward. Miss Hale, we've reviewed the footage. The suspect fled downriver. There's no sign of him yet. He'll come back, Lena said quietly. He always does. The detective studied her. You've got powerful enemies. Whatever's on that hard drive, it's not just evidence, it's a death sentence. Lena looked down at her hands. Then ill make it worth dying for. He sighed, scribbling something on his notepad. The Bureau's willing to offer protection if you hand over the drive. She met his gaze. Protection won't bring my mother back. Or Victoria. But the truth might. By dawn, the city was buzzing again with news. Victoria Hale, dead in dockside, shooting police investigating sons. Involvement. Reporters swarmed every corner of Manhattan. The Hale name, once untouchable, was now synonymous with scandal, greed, and blood. At the apartment, Ben paced restlessly. We can't stay here, Lena. Elliot's still out there. I know, she said. But we're not running. Not this time. She booted up the laptop and opened the drive. Her mother's files blinked to life. Spreadsheets, audio recordings, and a hidden folder labeled Project Shield. Inside were dozens of confidential documents revealing massive government kickbacks, illegal trades, and offshore laundering proof that Hale Corporation had built its fortune on corruption stretching across decades. Ben whistled under his breath. If this goes public, half of Wall Street will burn. That's the point, Lena said. Before she could hit send, her laptop froze, then a message flashed across the screen. We see you, Lena. Her blood ran cold. She slammed the lid shut. Hes hacking the feed. He's watching. Ben's voice shook. Then what do we do? Lena grabbed her bag. We finish what Mom started. They fled to David Klein's safe house, the old journalist who had once helped Catherine. The building was hidden behind a printing shop, its walls lined with dusty archives. When they arrived, Klein looked at the hard drive and nodded grimly. Once we upload this to the global press network, there's no going back. You'll expose every player in this game, including people who could bury you. Lena's eyes hardened. Then let them try. She sat at the terminal, entering passwords as the system came alive. One click and the files began uploading. Progress bar, 2%, 5%, 10%. Then a gunshot shattered the window. Ben yelled, pulling her down. Another bullet ripped through the monitor, sparks flying. From outside, footsteps thundered closer. It's Elliot, Klein shouted. He found us. Lena clutched the portable backup drive and sprinted toward the back exit. The sound of gunfire echoed down the hallway as she and Ben burst into the alley. A black car screeched around the corner. Trow! Ben shouted. Lena ran, clutching the drive to her chest, the city lights blurring past as tires screeched behind her. She could hear Elliot's voice, shouting her name. Closer now, relentless. Then, just as she reached the intersection, a blinding spotlight cut through the dark, a helicopter rising from above, floodlights sweeping down. Federal agents poured out of nearby vans, shouting orders. And in that frozen moment, Lena turned and saw Elliot caught in the light at last. The night erupted in chaos. Red and blue lights flashed across the rain-slicked streets as agents shouted commands over the roar of helicopter blades. Lena stood frozen, the hard drive clutched to her chest, her lungs burning from the chase. Elliot turned toward her, his designer suit torn, his face smeared with dirt and blood. For the first time, he didn't look like a billionaire's heir. He looked like a man cornered by his own sins. "Drop the weapon!" a federal agent yelled, aiming his rifle. Elliot's eyes darted between Lena and the swarm of agents. "You think you've won?" he spat, voice cracking. "You have no idea how deep this goes." "Put it down, Elliot," Lena shouted, her voice echoing through the night. "It's over. The world knows." But he only laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "You think exposing a few files will change anything? The same men who buried your mother will bury you too. You're just a pawn like she was." Lena stepped forward, trembling but defiant. "Then ill be the pawn who takes down the king." The agents moved in closer. Elliot raised his gun butt before he could pull the trigger. A shot rang out from behind. His body jerked, the weapon clattering to the pavement. He crumpled to his knees, staring at Lena in disbelief before collapsing. Silence fell except for the hum of the helicopter. Lena stared at him, her hands shaking. For a long moment, she felt nothing, no victory. No relief, only the hollow ache of everything she'd lost. Victoria, her mother, even the chance at forgiveness. A federal officer approached cautiously. "Mom, are you hurt?" Lena shook her head slowly. "No, but I think he was right. It's not over." They escorted her and Ben to a federal safe house downtown. Hours later, she sat across from a team of investigators as they examined the files from the hard drive. One of them, a woman in a dark blazer, looked up with wide eyes. "These documents, they're massive. Offshore accounts, bribery trails, political payoffs. This could trigger an entire government inquiry. Lena's voice was hoarse. Then use them. My mother died to get those files. My grandmother died protecting them. Don't let it be for nothing. The agent nodded. You have my word. But you should understand this will destroy powerful people. Your name will be everywhere. There's no going back. Lena glanced at Ben, who sat beside her, exhausted but alive. There's nothing left to go back to, she whispered. Within days, the story exploded worldwide. News networks played Catherine Hale's confession video, Victoria's last public speech, and footage of the Hale Docks tragedy. Headlines screamed, "The Hale Empire falls, decades of corruption exposed." The empire her family had built on greed was gone. In its place stood the truth raw, painful, undeniable. But with victory came loss. Victoria's funeral drew hundreds of mourners, yet only 2 people truly wept for her, Lena and Ben. As the casket lowered into the ground beside Catherine's, Lena felt the weight of generations pressing on her shoulders and the strange, quiet peace of a legacy redeemed. After the ceremony, a journalist approached her with a microphone. "Miss Hale," he said, "you've just brought down one of the most powerful families in America. What will you do now?" Lena looked out at the grey sky, her mother's locket warm in her palm. "I'm not here to destroy names," she said softly. "I'm here to rebuild one." The reporter nodded, but she was already walking away. Later that night, in the quiet of her apartment, Lena opened her laptop and watched her mother's video again. "Don't trust anyone," Catherine's voice said, "but never stop fighting for the truth." Lena smiled through her tears. "I didn't stop, Mum. I finished it." Outside, the city lights shimmered like scattered stars. And for the first time, Lena felt her mother's presence not as a ghost, but as strength in her blood, guiding her toward a future no longer built on secrets, but on truth. Weeks passed, and for the first time in her life, Lena Moreno, Lena Hale, woke up to silence that didn't feel like fear. The world had shifted. The Hale Corporation was under federal investigation, its assets frozen, its board dismantled. Every major news outlet carried her face, calling her the woman who ended an empire. But fame meant nothing to her. She had moved into a small brick townhouse on the edge of Brooklyn with Ben. It was modest, but it was theirs. No marble floors, no chandeliers, just the warm smell of coffee, the laughter of neighbors, and sunlight that didn't feel like a spotlight. On the morning of the final court hearing, Lena stood before a mirror, buttoning her navy blazer. Her reflection stared back, older, steadier. A woman who had walked through fire and survived. "Mum," she whispered softly, "today, we close it for good." At the courthouse, reporters lined the steps. Cameras flashed as Lena and Ben entered hand in hand. Inside, the courtroom was packed with journalists, attorneys, and government officials. The presiding judge, a calm, grey-haired woman, adjusted her glasses and began to read the charges against the Hale estate: embezzlement, fraud, bribery, and conspiracy. Elliot Hale, now pale and gaunt in his orange prison uniform, sat a few rows away, his eyes hollow. He avoided Lena's gaze, but she looked straight at him. There was no hatred left in her eyes, only sorrow. When it was her turn to speak, Lena walked to the stand. The room fell silent. "My name is Lena Hale," she began, her voice steady. "I grew up thinking my family was dead and my life was meaningless. But I've learned that truth doesn't die, it just waits. My mother, Catherine Hale, gave her life trying to expose the corruption that destroyed her. My grandmother tried to make peace with her guilt and paid with her life. Today, I stand here not to seek revenge, but to make sure their voices are never buried again." She paused, letting her words settle. "We can't undo the past, but we can choose what comes next. And I choose to rebuild the Hale name not on greed, but on grace." A hush filled the courtroom. Even the judge's voice softened as she said, "Miss Hale, your courage has reminded this court and this country that justice is possible." The verdict was swift. Elliot Hale guilty on all counts, life imprisonment without parole. As the gavel struck, Lena felt something in her chest finally unclench. The ghosts that had haunted her family were gone. After the hearing, Lena stepped outside into a sea of cameras. Reporters shouted questions, but she ignored them all. She looked up at the sky, grey and soft with rain, and whispered, "It's over, Mom." A week later, Lena reopened her Calf Catherine's table. It had been closed since the chaos, but now sunlight poured through its windows again. The sign outside gleamed, freshly painted. Honesty, family, hope. People filled the place and neighbors, friends, even former employees from the old Hale offices who wanted to start over. A small photo wall displayed pictures of Catherine and Victoria, smiling side by side at last. That afternoon, a little girl entered with her mother, pointing to a framed article on the wall. "Is that really you?" she asked shyly. Lena smiled. "It was me once, but now I'm just someone who makes coffee and remembers what matters." The child grinned. "My mom says you're brave." Lena laughed softly. "Then tell your mom, bravery runs in families." As evening fell, she locked up the calf, stepping outside to the gentle hum of the city. The world no longer felt like an enemy, it felt like possibility. She turned her face toward the wind, the locket at her neck warm against her skin, and whispered, "We did it." Somewhere in the quiet, she could almost hear her mother's reply, "You were never alone." Spring arrived quietly that year, as if the world itself was giving Lena permission to rest. The last of the court cases had ended, the news coverage had slowed, and for the first time in months, her life wasn't built on fear. The calf had grown busier every day. Families, college students, and even former Hale employees came to support her new beginning. But peace didn't come easily. Some nights Lena would wake before dawn, half expecting another knock on the door, another threat, another ghost. One such morning, she sat at her kitchen table, sipping tea, when a courier arrived. "Delivery for Miss Lena Hale," he said, handing her a small, weathered box, sealed with the Hale family crest. She frowned. The handwriting on the label was delicate, almost old-fashioned. The return address read, Hale Manor Archives. Inside the box was a bundle of envelopes tied together with a silk ribbon faded, yellowed by time. On top, a note written in Victoria's hand read, "For my granddaughter, when she is ready to understand everything." Lena's breath caught. Her hands shook as she opened the first letter. "My dearest Lena," it began, "if you are reading this, then my time has passed, and the truth has already found its way to you. I have spent my life chasing perfection, believing that power could protect the people I loved. But power without love is a prison, and I built my own walls higher with every lie I told." Lena's eyes blurred with tears as she read on. "Your mother, Catherine, was the best of us, brave where I was cowardly, honest where I was proud. When she defied me, I saw betrayal, but what she offered was salvation. I only saw it too late. If I could trade my fortune to hear her laugh one more time, I would. And if I could rewrite one thing, it would be this. I would have chosen love over legacy." Lena pressed the letter to her chest, her tears falling freely now. She reached for another. The second envelope was from her mother. The paper was creased and fragile, her handwriting elegant and warm. "My sweet girl," it began, "if you're reading this, then I didn't make it. But I need you to know something important. I never ran from you. I ran for you. Every choice I made was to keep you safe. I prayed that someday you'd understand the truth that being a Hale isn't a curse. It's a calling to be better than those who came before us. Promise me you'll forgive them, even when they don't deserve it, because forgiveness is freedom." Lena's shoulders shook as she read the final lines. You are my second chance. Live the life I couldn't. Love all without fear. And when you see the sunrise, know that I am there too. She sat in silence for a long time, the morning light spreading across the table. Then, very carefully, she placed the letters beside a framed photo of both women, the mother who had sacrificed everything, and the grandmother who had tried to atone. That afternoon, she brought the letters to Catherine's table. She placed them in a glass case near the register, with a small sign that read, "The Price of Truth, a Family Story." Customers stopped to read them, many leaving quietly in tears. Later, a man in a simple grey suit approached her. You don't know me, he said, but I was one of the workers who lost everything when Hale Corporation collapsed. I thought I'd hate you forever. But after reading those letters, I realized you set us all free. Lena smiled softly. That's all I wanted, to free us from the lies. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky gold and crimson, she whispered to herself, forgiveness isn't weakness, it's how you start again. That night, she finally slept without nightmares, her mother's and grandmother's words echoing softly in her dreams. You are loved. You are home. The day was warm, with sunlight so soft it looked painted. Months had passed since the scandal, and the Hale name had slowly begun to transform from one of corruption into one of resilience. The foundation Lena built with her grandmother's remaining assets, the Catherine Hale Foundation for Truth and Hope, had begun funding shelters for women and children who'd lost everything to power and greed. But today wasn't about business or rebuilding. Today was about closure. Lena drove quietly along the countryside road that led out of the city, her brother Ben asleep in the passenger seat. In the back seat, wrapped in a small velvet box, were 2 gold lockets, one engraved with the letter C for Catherine and the other with V for Victoria. Her GPS pinged softly. The coordinates led her to a wide open field just beyond the city limits, blanketed in wild daisies, the same kind that filled the photo her mother had always kept, the same one that started everything. She parked the car and stepped out, the breeze catching her hair. The field stretched endlessly before her, white petals dancing beneath the sunlight. It was exactly as her mother had described it in her diary. When I die, I hope he'll be buried somewhere the wind smells like daisies. Ben joined her, holding a small wooden cross he'd carved himself. You sure this is the place? Lena nodded. She said this was where she and Dad used to meet before everything went wrong. I think this is where her heart always lived. They walked into the middle of the field, and Lena knelt, pressing her palm into the soft earth. Hi, Mom, she whispered, her voice trembling. It's me. It's over now. The truth's out. They know who you were. Ben placed the cross beside her and stepped back, letting his sister speak. I used to think forgiveness meant weakness, Lena said softly. But you were right, it means peace. Grandma tried to make things right before she died, and I did what you couldn't. I finished it. I exposed them all. A tear rolled down her cheek, landing on the soil. She opened the velvet box and took out the 2 lockets, placing them gently side by side at the base of the cross. You belong together now, she murmured. No more secrets between you. A light breeze swept through the field, carrying the faint scent of flowers and rain. For a moment, Lena swore she could hear her mother's laughter, the soft, distant kind that lived only in memory. Ben crouched beside her, his voice barely above a whisper. She'd be proud of you, Lena. So would Grandma. Lena smiled through her tears. I think they're proud of both of us. They sat together in silence, the world around them peaceful for the first time in years. No headlines, no lawyers, no noise, just the hum of life continuing. Before leaving, Lena took one last look at the field. The sun had dipped low, turning the daisies gold. She took out her phone and snapped a picture, the same angle as the one her mother had taken decades ago. "This time," she said quietly, "it's not the beginning of a tragedy. It's the end of one." As they walked back to the car, Ben slipped his hand into hers. "What happens now?" Lena smiled faintly. "Now we live for them, for us." They drove off, the field shrinking in the rearview mirror until it was just a shimmer of white in the distance. Later that night, Lena hung the printed photo on the calf wall beside the letters and newspaper clippings. Above it, she placed a simple plaque that read, "The field of daisies, where the truth began and love never ended." And as the calf lights dimmed, she stood alone for a moment, whispering into the stillness, "We're free, Mom." Outside, a gust of wind rustled through the trees, scattering daisy petals along the sidewalk like blessings carried home at last. A full year had passed since the night that changed everything. The world had moved on, but for Lena Hale, each day felt like another chance to build something new, something pure. The calf, Catherine's table, had grown from a quiet corner shop into a symbol of healing. Locals called it the place where broken things find purpose. Every morning, sunlight streamed through its wide windows, illuminating walls covered with photo-smiling families, charity projects, community events. In one corner hung a framed newspaper headline that read, "Hail Heiress restores empire through kindness." Below it, a small brass plaque bore 3 simple words: Catherine, Victoria, Lena. That morning, the calf buzzed with life. Students typed on laptops, construction workers laughed over coffee, and children ran between tables. Behind the counter, Lena poured cappuccinos with a steady hand and a peaceful heart. The chaos of her old life felt like a distant storm finally faded beyond the horizon. "Miss Hale," said a soft voice behind her. It was a middle-aged woman in a faded blue coat, holding a worn photograph. "I saw the story about your mother. She was my teacher once at the community center. She told me, the truth may hurt, but silence kills. She saved my life." Lena blinked, her throat tightening. "Thank you for telling me that," she said, smiling through sudden tears. The woman squeezed her hand. "She'd be proud. You turned all that pain into light." As the woman left, Lena glanced toward the window. Across the street, she saw the sign of her new foundation's office, the Hale Center for Integrity and Change. Inside, volunteers were organizing scholarships and outreach programs in her mother's name. The very company that once destroyed lives was now rebuilding them. Ben walked in from the back, wiping flour from his hands, the suppliers asking if we're still donating pastries to the shelter. Lena grinned. "Of course. That was Mom's rule, one leaves hungry." He chuckled. "You sound more like her every day." The clock above the counter chimed noon. Lena untied her apron, stepping outside into the crisp air. The city, once suffocating, now felt alive, like it was breathing with her. Across the street, a new mural covered the side of a building. A woman standing in a field of daisies, sunlight breaking behind her. Beneath it were the words, "Truth blooms, even from ashes." A familiar car pulled up to the curb. David Klein stepped out, the journalist who had risked everything to help her mother. "You've made quite the mark, Miss Hale," he said with a smile. "The world doesn't forget stories like yours." "I hope they remember hers more than mine," Lena said softly. "She's the reason any of this exists." He nodded. "Your mother once told me something I never forgot. When one Hale falls, another must rise, not to reclaim the throne, but to plant a garden. You've done that. Lena, you've turned an empire into a garden." Her eyes filled with warmth. "Then maybe it's finally time to live in it." As he left, she sat on the bench outside the cafe, watching the world go by. Families laughed, taxis honked, and sunlight spilled across the pavement. She reached for the locket around her neck, opening it to reveal the tiny photo of her mother and grandmother together. "I hope you're watching," she whispered, "because we made it. We turned everything they broke into something beautiful." A gentle breeze swept past, rustling her hair. For a moment, the scent of daisies filled the air. though none grew nearby. She smiled, closing her eyes. Later that evening, as the cafe lights dimmed and the last customers left, Lena wrote a small note and taped it to the counter before locking up. It read, "For anyone who's lost everything, this is proof you can begin again." Outside, the night sky shimmered, the stars reflecting in the cafe windows like tiny flames of hope. And beneath those lights, Lena Hale finally exhaled no longer the girl who found a wallet, but the woman who found her destiny. So that's it, my dear friends. Our story has come full circle. If you're still here, listening until this very moment, it means something deep in this story touched your heart. Maybe it reminded you of loss, forgiveness, or that quiet courage it takes to begin again. Lena's journey wasn't just about uncovering a family secret. It was about discovering that healing begins the moment we stop running from pain and start walking with it. The Stoics used to say, "What stands in the way becomes the way." And isn't that true for all of us? Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every fire we survive, they aren't endings. They're beginnings we don't yet understand. Like Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The obstacle is the path." So if this story stirred something in you, hold on to that feeling. Let it remind you that even after the hardest nights, the sun still rises, and so can you. If you found a piece of yourself somewhere in this story, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Not just to support this channel, but to keep spreading stories that remind us we all fall, but we can all rise with truth, with love, and with hope.